think all of us tabletop gamers are occasionally guilty of picking up a game just because we like the look of it, the theme seems to fit, the mechanics sound interesting, or are similar to a game we've otherwise played. And Black Hole Buccaneers was absolutely one of these games for me. Add on to this the fact that it's produced by Pegasus Spieler, the same people who make Port Royale, which is one of my all-time favourite card games and a game I've already covered on this channel, and suddenly Black Hole Buccaneers is right up there on my "ooh, that looks really interesting" list. So I took a dive, grabbed a copy, I've played several rounds of this. How do I feel about it? So Black Hole Buccaneers is a set collecting card drafting game for 3 to 5 players. That puts it in the same kind of category as games like Sushi Go. If you're not familiar with this kind of mechanic, the basic premise is that you have your hand of cards, as does every player around the table. You choose the one that you want to keep, and then pass the rest on to the next player in sequence. Then, each of you reveals the card that you've chosen. You pick up the card of hands that was just passed to you. You pick one of those, and you pass the rest on again. And so this continues until basically players have picked an entire hand's worth of cards. Now I use Sushi Go as an example because it's a fairly ubiquitous game in the hobby. A lot of people have played it, and the basic premise is that you're going around the table drafting the cards like this in order to build sets. Some cards score when you've got multiples of the same card, some of them score with sequences, some of them are just flat points on their own, some of them you get more points if you've got more than other people. Lots of different scoring criteria, but essentially you're building a collection of cards on the table in front of you that are there to score points, and at the end of however many rounds you total up your points, and whoever has the most wins. That's pretty standard, right? But what about Black Hole Buccaneers? Because this is a little bit different. In Black Hole Buccaneers, you are essentially space salvagers, trying to grab wreckage and loot from the very edge of black holes. So rather than just making a sushi menu or the like, interestingly, that theme has already caught me. The concept of just grabbing space junk from the edge of a black hole sounds pretty cool. And unlike Sushi Go, Black Hole Buccaneers has a bit more going on. But this is kind of the problem, and we'll come back to this a bit more later on. And I think at this point, I need to get something off the table immediately when it comes to talking about these cards. As I'm looking through these, you'll no doubt be looking at some of these and going, oh, that's the thing from that, right? That's GLaDOS from Portal. That's the TARDIS from Doctor Who. That's Claptrap from Borderlands. That's the Towel from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And yes, pretty much every single card in this massive deck, I mean, for crying out loud, we've even got Clippy from Microsoft Office. Each of these cards is absolutely a geek reference, and there is a certain joy going through all of these and figuring out where they've come from. Like obviously that's Pokemon, that's Hitchhiker's Guide again. We've got Wally, we've got Broccoli. Okay, some of them are a little bit weirder, but the basic concept here is that a lot of these cards are heavily referencing various different aspects of geek culture, and I'm not going to showcase all of them because almost every card in here is something that will make the geeks in your group go, oh, that's the thing from this thing. And on one hand, that's really cool. On the other hand, it does have me worried that Black Hole Buccaneers doesn't have any actual content of its own. It doesn't have any identity of its own, and it's relying heavily on geek culture in order to get that across. Now, this heavy reliance on geek culture isn't in and of itself going to be a problem, as long as the game underneath it's pretty solid, right? And let me be completely frank with you. Black Hole Buccaneers is a decent game. There's a good amount going on, it's nice and thinky, there's a lot of decisions to be made, your decisions definitely have an impact in the game, and it can be a lot of good fun. However, there are some certain concerns that we're going to need to address before we go too far into this one. So immediately in Black Hole Buccaneers, we have our very first rub. You see, as I mentioned, you are taking loot from the outside of a black hole. Players will therefore have 3 of these cards that they essentially play through 3 separate rounds. Now on these cards you can see that there is, first of all, at the bottom of the card, a number that shows how many cards are going to be in each player's hand at the start of the round, how many bits of loot they're going to essentially get to choose. The top number is the mass limit on that particular black hole. This means you need to be able to choose your loot carefully, because it's not just the value of the loot that matters, but also its weight. Gather too much loot and you'll get sucked into the black hole at the end of the round and not have any points scored. And this is a rub that I actually really like. It gives you a little bit of decision making. You see, each piece of gear that you are selecting has both a value and a weight. You need to be picking items that are worth the points to you, but not so much that you end up being overburdened and sucked into the black hole at the end of the round. You've got to choose your points carefully, and I really like that decision-making process. So first of all, let's talk about the different card types. Let's start with the robots. Now, when you select a robot, it goes down on the table in front of you, face down, like it would for anyone else, and other players will play their cards as well. Now, when you reveal which card you've selected, you'll see that a robot has two different sides to it. Here, the Chatterbot is worth 4 value at 2 weight, but it also has 2 value and 4 weight. And this is the same across all the different robots in the game, and there are more to them than just the ones I'm showing. Essentially what this means is, if you reveal a robot and any other player reveals a robot, you all turn the cards sideways and you use the lower value with the higher weight. That's pretty straightforward, and it does give you this kind of, oh, this is quite a high scoring card. But if I pick this at the wrong time and someone else picks a robot, instead of being 7 value for 3 weight, it's now going to be 3 value for 7 weight. And that becomes problematic, because suddenly you've got a lot more weight and a lot less value, and that black hole is looming. Then there are the bits of the time machine from H.G. Wells's The Time Machine. Now these are really quite straightforward. When you first have one of these pieces, it's worth 2 value at 5 weight. When you have 2 of them, they both rotate. So now they're both worth 4 value and 4 weight. At 3 of them, they rotate again. So now all 3 pieces are 5 value for 3 weight. And if you manage to get all 4 different pieces, that shoots all the way around, so all 4 pieces are worth 5 value and 2 weight. This means that if you have just one of these pieces, it's 2 value and 5 weight, whereas theoretically you can get all 4 pieces, it's going to be 20 value for only 8 weight. Of course, when you first look at the card of hands, the hand of cards, you've got no idea how many different parts of the time machine there are, and they must be different parts. You can't have 2 warp engines or 2 quantum steering, for example. You are trying to build all 4 pieces. And this can be problematic because you're not going to be using the entire deck every draw. So what happens if you pick one of the pieces or 2 of the pieces and there just simply aren't any other bits in here? That said though, there are quite a few time machine parts in the deck, so the chances of you getting at least some of it is pretty high. Then there are the toys. Now, when a toy is put down in front of you, you don't reveal it at the end of the turn as you would with the other cards. Instead, it remains face down. And at the end of the round, players reveal all the toys that they have in front of them. The person with the highest value of toys gets a special little card that reduces their overall mass. You see, toys, not much on their own, but in bulk, well, they trade well on the alien market, apparently. So trying to get a lot of high-value toys can be a really good thing, and if you're lucky enough to have more toys than anyone else, you'll get that reduction to your weight limit, which means you can try and be cheeky and actually end up overburdened for the black hole on the hopes that you've got more than anyone else, and you get that reduction that brings you back to safety. Now that's an interesting mechanic, and I like that because it is a kind of push your luck. You could sit there and grab a whole ton of different toys, hoping that you've got the highest value, but your opponents and you are all competing, and that reveal can be pretty tense as to who actually gets the toy and who actually ends up plummeting into a black hole. Then there are spaceships, and spaceships are a bit of a weird one. For starters, a lot of these are very high value, but very high weight. The Battlestar Pegasus, for example, 14 value, but a whopping 10 weight. You'll notice that some of them also are actually negatives. This can be very useful for when you need to essentially reduce your mass down. If you've reached the end of a round and you're realizing you're getting dangerously close to being pulled into that black hole, well, going for something like the Blue Tinkle or the Kettlebell can allow you to reduce your weight down a little bit at the cost of losing some of your overall value. Spaceships are also used in tiebreakers. Whoever has the most of them at the end of a round will win all tiebreakers. That's an interesting decision to make, right? Then we have the artifacts. And artifacts tend to be a bit more straightforward on the surface, but they do interesting things underneath. They all have special rules on them that will either happen when revealed or at the beginning of your next turn, or all kinds of craziness going on with these things. They don't tend to be worth as many points as some of the other cards, but the benefits that they do can really shift the balance of favour. The Swiss Army pocket laser here, yes, really, this allows you to modify how much mass you can collect from around the black hole and the other players. So you could use this to help yourself if you're overburdened, or maybe screw someone else over, or just make things a little bit tighter for everyone. Then you've got things like the loot box, which beginning with your turn, every time you reveal a card with weight 6 or higher, you rotate this card 90 degrees, once again, changing its value. And again, at surface level, I really like these because they add a little bit of decision making and problem solving to a card drafting game. Then we have the shapeshifters. Now, shapeshifters have a matching value and weight. And this is where things get really interesting with these guys, because when you play a shapeshifter, it's obviously worth its value and its weight. But when you play another shapeshifter, they all change their form. They keep their value, but their weight changes to match the new card. So if I'd played both of these, for example, they would have a combined value of 13, but a combined weight of 10, because they're both using the Morpho Mystico's mass. If later on I find good old Clippy and I add the mini Morpho out there, now all of these three go to mass 3, which means now it's 9 mass for a total of 16 points. If, however, you'd taken the mini Morpho early on, then you'd taken the Morpho Mystico, and then the Morpho Cubo afterwards, they would still have those same 16 points. But now, because the Morpho Mystico is the last one to be played, they've all got 8 mass. Suddenly, that's not such a good deal. Then there are the relics, and these are where things get really quite interesting and sometimes a little bit finicky. You see, these don't just add their weight and value anymore, they now add new scoring conditions. So for example, the anti-gravity carpet here. During the score phase, take the plus 10 value card if your cards have the lowest total weight. So basically, you get 10 additional value if you have the lowest weight overall, and that can really change things in the last turn. Or how about the emergency towel? During the score phase, gain 5 points if the total weight of your cards exceeds the final threshold. Like, if you're going to get sucked in, well, at least you get 5 points, right? Don't panic. To the point that this is a card drafting game with this much rulebook. And a lot of this is just talking about all the different types of cards. But when you open up the rulebook and you see that the score phase has all of these different steps, well, that can look a little bit daunting. Admittedly, most of this is just if these cards happen to be in play, exactly how you do those things, and when they occur. And so ultimately, that's Black Hole Buccaneers. Yes, hello. It is a fantastic game that does have some really cool layering to it. The theme's a little bit loose and relies heavily on referential culture, which you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. It's good fun, and I found I was genuinely having a good giggle with our group at this. Then you have the actual game itself, which I can absolutely say is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of decision making, and we like decision making in our games, right? But it's that barrier to entry. I almost feel like there are too many decisions, too many moving parts, that it never quite feels streamlined. If I want something that's a quick filler just between games, and I want to play card drafting, I think I'll just stick to Sushi Go. And if I want something that's space-themed and takes up the amount of weight that this has, there are other games out there that I think just do it better for our group. I'm not sad that I bought Black Hole Buccaneers. I've enjoyed my time with it, but it is very difficult to get to a table compared to what it actually is. The amount of effort you have to put into it, I just don't think quite balances out with what you get out of the game. So at this point in the video, I usually ask the question, does this game join our crew, or do we make it walk the plank? And I don't think this is quite as harsh as making it walk the plank. I don't think it's a bad game. But getting it to a table is proving difficult. All of us are like, it was okay. We just got other stuff we'd rather do in that time. I'm not convinced I want to keep it, but I'm not convinced I want to get rid of it either. Anyway, folks, that's been Black Hole Buccaneers and my opinion of it. If you've enjoyed this, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. While you're there, hit like, drop a sub to the channel, and yeah, that would really, really help out. I do also have a Patreon and a PayPal that you can help support the channel if you want to see more videos like this. But otherwise, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Happy sailing, and see you all next time.